The streets have rules. You can break the law. You can break commandments. You can break promises to God and your mother and every woman who ever loved you, but you cannot break the code. The 8 people on this list broke it. They snitched. They stole. They killed the wrong person. They crossed the wrong man. And the streets, patient, quiet, unforgiving, came back and made every single one of them pay with their life. Some of them paid in months. Some of them paid in years. And one of them thought he had gotten away with it for 31 years before a bullet found him on Halloween morning. This is the countdown from number 8 to number 1, and every entry ends the same way. A closed casket. Number 8. The witness who testified against Chester Wheeler Campbell, Detroit. Chester Wheeler Campbell had an IQ of 162. He was a hitman connected to the Italian mafia in Detroit. He was one of the most calculating men in the history of the city's underworld. When federal agents arrested him, they thought the hardest part was over. It wasn't. The hardest part was keeping their witness alive. Someone from inside Campbell's world had agreed to testify against him. Someone who knew the details of his operation. Someone who believed the courts could protect them from a man who had made killing his profession. They were wrong. The witness was found dead. His throat was slit from one side to the other. On both eyelids, carved into the skin with a blade, were X's, 2 X's, one on each eye, a message written in human flesh. No arrest was ever made. No one was ever charged. But every potential witness in Detroit understood what those X's meant. You talk about Chester Wheeler Campbell, and the last thing you see before you die is someone carving a message into your face, so the next person thinks twice. Number 7. E-Moneybags, Queens, New York, 2001. In December 1999, a rapper and street figure named Eric E-Moneybags Smith shot and killed Colbert Black Just Johnson, a close friend of Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Supreme was the founder of the Supreme Team, one of the most powerful drug organizations in Queens history. Black Just wasn't just an associate, he was family. Supreme didn't react immediately. He didn't send threats. He didn't make phone calls. He went quiet for 18 months. And in that silence, he put $50,000 in an envelope and handed it to a hit team from Harlem. On July 16, 2001, E-Moneybags was sitting in his parked truck at a neighborhood barbecue in Queens. Summer afternoon, people eating, kids playing, music on the speakers. The hit team walked up to the truck, point-blank range. 11 shots. E-Moneybags died in the driver's seat with the barbecue still going on behind him. After the killing, Supreme picked up his phone and sent a text message to a friend. 5 words, "You missed the party." 3 months later, Supreme ordered a second hit on Troy Big Nose Singleton, an associate of E-Money's who Supreme feared might retaliate. The shooters found Singleton on a Queen Street, shot him in the head, then fired 7 more rounds into his body as he lay on the ground. 18 months of patience, 2 bodies, $50,000, and a text message that federal prosecutors would later read aloud in court. Supreme got life without parole, but the debts had already been paid. Number 6. Felix Mitchell, Leavenworth, Kansas, 1986. Felix the Cat. Mitchell was the king of East Oakland. His 69 mob controlled the heroin trade across California and into the Midwest. $5 million a year flowed out of the same housing projects where he grew up. He ruled through fear. He ruled through violence. And he made enemies on every block he touched. In 1985, Mitchell was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. He was sent to Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, one of the most secure facilities in the country. Most people assumed that federal prison would be the one place Mitchell's enemies could not reach him. The streets do not stop at the prison gates. On August 21, 1986, 2 days before his 32nd birthday, Felix Mitchell was stabbed to death inside Leavenworth. He had been locked up for barely a year. The enemies he made ruling Oakland with an iron fist had followed him inside the walls. They waited for the right moment, and they finished what the streets had started. His funeral became the most spectacular in gangster history. Horse-drawn carriage, 14 Rolls-Royce limousines, thousands lining the streets of Oakland, international news coverage, but the man in the casket was proof that no cell, no wall, and no federal facility can protect you from the debts you built on the outside. Number 5. Hugo Pinell, Sacramento, California, 2015. In August 1971, Hugo "Yogi" Bear Pinell helped slit the throats of 2 prison guards during a failed escape attempt at San Quentin. 6 people died that day. The Black Guerrilla family founder George Jackson was shot and killed by tower guards during the chaos. Pinell survived. The state of California put him in solitary confinement, the security housing unit at Pelican Bay, 23 hours a day in a concrete box. No human contact, no sunlight, 44 years. In 2015, a legal settlement forced California to release long-term solitary inmates into the general population. Hugo Pinell, now 71 years old, was moved to a Sacramento area prison yard. He had been in a box since Richard Nixon was president. He had not walked a prison yard in over 4 decades. The Aryan Brotherhood had not forgotten. They had not forgiven. They had simply waited for the state of California to open the door. Within days of Pinell stepping onto the yard, Aryan Brotherhood members attacked him and stabbed him to death in broad daylight. The killing triggered a riot that sent 11 inmates to the hospital. 44 years. That is how long the Aryan Brotherhood held a grudge. They could not get to Pinell through concrete and steel, so they waited for someone to remove the concrete and steel, and the moment the door opened, they were standing on the other side. Number 4. Pistol Pete's cooperator, the Bronx, New York, late 1990s. Peter Rolak, known as Pistol Pete, built sex money murder into one of the most violent drug organizations on the East Coast, operating out of the Soundview houses in the South Bronx. When the feds took him down, they flipped a member of his crew. Someone agreed to cooperate. Someone gave up names and operations. Someone thought the government's protection would be enough. It wasn't. From a federal prison cell in North Carolina, hundreds of miles from the Bronx, Rolak wrote a coded letter to his girlfriend. That letter contained specific instructions about a specific person at a specific event. On Thanksgiving Day, the annual football game between Soundview and Castle Hill houses was packed with families. Children on the sidelines, mothers watching from apartment windows. It was a neighborhood tradition, one of the few days a year when the blocks felt normal. The cooperating witness was in the crowd. He was shot and killed at the football game on Thanksgiving in front of families and children, because a man sitting in a cell hundreds of miles away wrote a letter in code, and his girlfriend made sure the right people read it. Pistol Pete got life plus 105 years. He was sent to ADX Florence to permanent solitary confinement. No phone calls, no mail, no contact with the outside world. Because the last time Peter Rolak communicated with anyone, a man died on a holiday meant for giving thanks. Number 3. Kaboni Savage's witness, Philadelphia, 2004. Kaboni Savage ran a drug empire in North Philadelphia for over a decade. He was violent, paranoid, and ruthless. He had one rule above all others: nobody talks. In 2004, federal prosecutors indicted Savage on drug and murder charges. Their star witness was a man named Eugene Coleman, a former associate who had decided to cooperate. Coleman gave the government everything: names, dates, murders. Enough to put Savage away forever. Savage was sitting in federal detention when he learned Coleman had flipped. He could not reach Coleman. Federal authorities had him locked in protective custody. So Savage did something that should have been unthinkable. He went after Coleman's family. On October 9, 2004, a member of Savage's crew, acting on orders relayed through Savage's sister, Kidada, firebombed the Coleman family home in the middle of the night. The explosion tore through the house while the family slept. 6 people died. 4 of them were children. Eugene Coleman was not home. He was in federal custody. The 4 children who burned to death that night had never sold a gram. They had never testified against anyone. They were sleeping in their beds when the fire came through the walls. Kaboni Savage became the first defendant in the history of Eastern Pennsylvania to receive the federal death penalty. The FBI agent on the case said it plainly. They thought no more of taking lives than of taking a phone call. The streets punish snitches. But Savage went further than punishment. He erased a family to send a message. The message was received by every potential witness in Philadelphia. Cooperate with the government, and the people you love will pay the price you were too protected to pay yourself. Number 2, the witness against Pappy Mason, Queens, New York, 1988. Howard Pappy Mason was one of the most feared drug lords in southeast Queens. He ran his operation alongside Fat Cat Nichols and Supreme McGriff in the Baisley Park area. When Pappy was jailed on a weapons charge, a neighborhood immigrant named Arjun had the courage to complain to the police about the drug dealers who had taken over his block. The New York Police Department assigned a rookie officer to guard Arjun's home. His name was Edward Byrne. He was 22 years old, fresh out of the academy, sitting in a patrol car 3:30 in the morning on a quiet street in Queens. Pappy Mason learned about the assignment from inside his jail cell, and from behind bars he gave the order. 4 men walked up to Officer Byrne's patrol car. They fired 5 shots into his head at point-blank range. He never drew his weapon. He never opened his door. He was killed sitting in the driver's seat of a police car because a drug lord in a jail cell decided that the presence of a cop on his block was disrespectful. The murder of Edward Byrne changed everything. President George H.W. Bush cited the killing in his campaign speeches. The New York Police Department restructured its entire approach to drug enforcement. New federal task forces were created specifically to dismantle crack organizations in New York City. Pappy Mason sent a message, but the message backfired. The system he was trying to intimidate responded with the most aggressive drug enforcement campaign in the city's history. The very act of revenge that was supposed to protect his empire became the thing that destroyed it. Number 1, Alpo Martinez. Harlem, New York, 2021. One night, after 31 years, he decided to visit the town he betrayed, the neighborhood where he had killed his best friend, the same blocks where he had built an empire and then burned it down with his own hands. And that night, the streets paid him back. Alberto Alpo Martinez had no business being in Harlem. The federal government had given him a new name, Abraham Rodriguez. They had given him a new address, a quiet apartment on College Street in Lewiston, Maine. They had given him witness protection, a clean identity, and a second chance at life. All he had to do was stay away. He could not. To understand why the streets wanted Alpo dead, you have to understand what he did to earn it. In the late 1980s, Alpo was one of the 3 kings of Harlem's crack empire alongside Rich Porter and Ozzie Faison. They were friends. They were partners. They built something together. Their story would later become the movie Paid in Full. Then Alpo destroyed everything. On January 3rd, 1990, Alpo murdered his best friend, Rich Porter. He shot him and left him in the bushes at Orchard Beach Park in the Bronx with $2,239 in his pockets. The man who had made millions died with pocket change on his body, killed by the person he trusted more than anyone on earth. Around the same time, Rich's 12-year-old brother Donald was kidnapped. $500,000 in ransom was demanded. Nobody could pay. Donald's body was found months later, wrapped in 14 black garbage bags and dumped on a bicycle path. He was 12 years old, a child who had nothing to do with the game. Alpo had killed his best friend. A 12-year-old boy was dead, and Harlem would never forget either one. Then came the betrayal that made the streets want him gone forever. After being arrested in 1991, Alpo sat down with federal prosecutors and gave them everything. He confessed to 14 murders. He testified against his own associates, including his hitman Wayne Silk Perry, one of the most feared men in Washington, D.C. His potential death sentence was reduced to 35 years. He was sent to ADX Florence and housed in a special unit for informants. In prison, they call those units cheese factories, a place for rats. He killed his best friend. A child died. And then he snitched on everyone who was left. 3 betrayals, each one worse than the last. He served his time. He got out in 2015. The government sent him to Maine with a new name and a new life. A second chance that Rich Porter and Donald Porter would never get. But Alpo started coming back to Harlem. At first in secret, then openly. He posted photos on social media. He was photographed in a Rolls-Royce in Atlanta. He rode motorcycles through the same blocks where Rich used to count his money. People in Harlem started seeing him. Kevin Childs, founder of Don Diva magazine, said there were these sightings, almost like Bigfoot. People would say they had seen him. Then he started bragging, on camera, smiling, laughing, acting like a man who had murdered his best friend, watched a child get killed, snitched on every associate he ever had, and gotten away with all of it. Rich Porter's niece was watching. She was 37 years old now. She had grown up in the shadow of what Alpo did to her family. And now she was watching him ride motorcycles through her uncle's neighborhood like he was the king of Harlem all over again. The streets were watching too. And the streets had been waiting for 31 years. On October 31st, 2021, Halloween morning, approximately 3:30 in the morning, Alpo Martinez was sitting in the driver's seat of a red Dodge Ram pickup truck on West 147th Street near Frederick Douglass Boulevard, Harlem. The same blocks where all 3 kings used to run. The same neighborhood he had been warned never to return to. Gunshots erupted through the driver's side window. 5 bullets, chest, chin, arm. He tried to drive away. The truck lurched forward a few blocks before it stopped. Paramedics rushed him to Harlem Hospital. He was pronounced dead on arrival. The ID in his pocket said Abraham Rodriguez, Lewiston, Maine. But every single person in Harlem knew exactly who was in that truck. When the sun came up that morning, Rich Porter's niece spoke to the Daily News. She did not cry. She said what the entire neighborhood was feeling. We waited for a long time for this day to come, and we are happy. That's why we're out here celebrating, drinking champagne. Champagne on the sidewalk at 7 in the morning for a murder. Because 31 years of watching the man who destroyed your family walk free, while your uncle got a casket and a child got garbage bags, will turn grief into something that looks exactly like celebration. In 2024, the man charged with killing Alpo, 27-year-old Shaquem Parker, went to trial. The jury came back with a verdict: not guilty. He walked free. Nobody is in prison for the murder of Alberto Martinez. The system that gave Alpo a new name, a new life, and witness protection could not convict the person who ended that life on a Harlem street corner on Halloween morning. 31 years, the longest revenge on this list, the most patient, and the most complete. The code does not have a statute of limitations. It does not have a witness protection program. It does not care about plea deals or reduced sentences or quiet apartments in Maine. It has one rule: you break it, you pay. It does not matter if it takes a year, a decade, 3 decades. On Halloween morning in 2021, the streets of Harlem collected a debt that was 31 years overdue. And nobody in Harlem is asking who did it. Nobody in Harlem is asking why, because everybody already knows.